Today we're joined by Alison. Alison, it's such an honor to have you on the podcast today. I'm such a big fan, and you're obviously a highly regarded career, business, and leadership mentor, as well as a business founder and podcast host. I followed your journey for a really long time, and I found your career transition over the past sort of 3 to 5 years really aspirational. So, thank you for joining us. How are you?
What a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've been really kind of stretching myself to accept more of these. I've been in a kind of closed, I don't know, chapter of creativity for many years now. And I feel like I'm re-emerging. So when you emailed, I was like, yeah, I'd love to have a chat.
Oh, I'm glad I could be a part of that. And I have noticed that in your social presence, which we'll obviously dive into, but I feel like you have been a bit more present, like showing your face, speaking more, and you've been talking about that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, I suppose we know that nothing can prepare us for the season of motherhood. And I went into that wanting, complete presence and really wanting to protect that time. And that did, of course, require me to get off social media a little bit. And now she's just over 2 and she's an independent woman. And so I've just got more space, more time, and social media is feeling fun. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. And I think like not enough people kind of talk about that as well, because something I've kind of learned in the last year as well is like it's your values. I've always tried to prioritize everything at once, but I've experienced burnout and things like that in the past, and you realize that you kind of have to pick a lane. So maybe that's family at one point, maybe that's career at one point. Something's kind of got to give.
this is actually basically the main thread that runs throughout my kind of mentoring methodology is our life exists in seasons, and that's the same for our professional expressions as well. And where the professional piece is in the acceptance of the season, and that's, I think, the same in life. We had to try really hard for our little girl, and we lost babies, and it was a years long journey. And so to finally have her, I was like, this is my role right now, and what I hope to gift her and offer her is my presence and the highest quality of me, and that requires me to pull back from other areas. But I think where we can create a bit of suffering for ourselves is the resistance to the season. Exactly. But if we just kind of and it's I say it with full knowledge of the privilege that comes with choice, and not everybody has that. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I worked really hard to make sure I could choose her in that season. So, yeah.
So, Alison, for those that may not know your story, um, tell us what you currently do and, about your career and business mentoring space. Um, and yeah, maybe touch as well on your background that you've had in your career.
Well, my kind of my primary occupation up until the past 5 years ago was as a publisher and a journalist and a writer, a content creator, particularly in women's lifestyle media. And traditionally trained journalist, started at the Walkley Foundation for Excellence in Journalism. So very, traditional upbringing in journalism. Had thought I was going to go into kind of news reporting and papers, but I worked on a really interesting project when I was at the Walkleys called The Future of Journalism, and it was all about journalism moving into the digital age. And I felt so lit up by that literally changed the course and the direction. I got early morning voice, but it literally changed the course and the direction of my entire career, because that led me into digital media in 2012, which, I mean, gosh, that's like over a decade ago, but we're talking like early blog days, and a blog spot. And Tumblr and Twitter had just launched. And it was really a time where the journalism community at large was very unaccepting of the prospect of, media going digital. But I was really excited about that. So that led me into, digital media in women. So I bypassed newspapers and magazines altogether, ended up really early in digital and worked my way up relatively quickly in a new media organization called Allure Media at the time. And I was there for a while, I think, about 7 or 8 years. And I started beautifully. I love these stories, hearing them from other people. I started as the weekend editor doing that 7 till 4 gig. And it was all predominantly, actually at that time, street style paparazzi shots of celebrities. And I ended up leaving that. So different to now. So I started there and I ended up leaving that business as the group publisher of what was at the time, I think 4 or 5 global women's titles. So I launched Who, What, Where and Birdie and Domain into this market, which was beautiful. Helped scale Pop Sugar, which is now a beautiful beast, and led by someone very close to me who I mentored in my old job. So that's really fulfilling. And then, in that job, I was responsible for hundreds of pieces of content a day. And I really started to sort of, I suppose, reflect on what impact that was having, of course, on me, but more broadly, the women that we were kind of claiming we were wanting to help and serve, when actually were we creating a lot of content about how to be better and get better and buy more and that we need more and hacks. And it was in that era of really kind of clickbait, clickable content, the sort of headlines that today my blood drains from my body when I read them. So that's kind of what led me to deciding to leave what was actually my dream job. I'm really going to be honest. Like I loved it. Yeah. Exactly. But couldn't, what it came to was it was that it felt out of integrity in the end. It felt really misaligned to, what I believed I was actually here to do. And that led me to the podcast, which was like one of those weird bridge projects as you're transitioning from, I left the job with no other job. And I was like, I'll just do this podcasting thing. Seems to be really interesting. I was really early. And then it just, it took off.
Absolutely loved your podcast. I still do. And I think it did just fill a space that needed to be filled, because I think during that time in 2020, a lot of us were kind of waking up to the fact, that I was working in corporate and PR and feeling similar, like what value am I bringing? What is the meaning behind what I'm doing? What am I putting out there? And hearing the stories that you were telling, I think helped so many women and still do.
I joke about this, but it's really serious, is I mentor a lot of people out of their jobs, and and for a while there I was like, go us. And I was like, oh wow, this is big. Like this really is. And I think we identify now, it really is a movement, it's particularly, and not to gender it too much, but for women, really kind of reclaiming the why behind their work and really going after that sense of peace and fulfillment and purpose. But, there was definitely a moment of realization where I was like, oh, I'm the transition gal. Like, I'm who you come to if you're like, so we're all leaving. But no, and I joke, but I say that I also do help a lot of people stay and reconnect with that meaning within corporate organizations that they might work in, or the businesses that they build for themselves. So.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept. And I'd probably love to do a whole episode on that, like identity and career. And, I feel like men some of them do, but I I feel like they often have a lot of hobbies and a lot of things, whereas women just kind of tie, like not always, obviously, but a lot of my friends as well, like you kind of tie up your identity and who you are and what you love in that career.
Well, this is where I think my work starts to get quite nuanced, and what it can only be experienced, right? It's not very easy to market, to be honest, on social media. Is I think the kind of, if there was a core why behind what I do, it's actually helping, and again, mostly women, but not just women. It's helping women create separation between what they are and who they are and what they do for a living. And it's also educating as much as I can that our work might not always be our core purpose in life. So for me in this chapter, my kind of core purpose has been being a present mother. But ultimately, we want to be able to show up inside businesses or our own businesses each day and feel a sense of contribution and maybe even the early kind of a glimmer of fulfillment. But I think if we try and make our work our purpose, that's when we start to find that suffering again, because it's not there. It's never going to be there.
To listen to the full interview with Alison Rice, you can listen to How Do You Hustle wherever you find your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, or Samsung podcasts. We hope you enjoyed this one.